4 of the FIA World Rally Championship is very much an open book. If they win, Subaru will equal Lancia's record of 6 consecutive World Rally victories. Mitsubishi is still trying to find the form that saw Tommy Mäkinen take last year's World Driver's crown, while Ford, despite leading all 3 rounds of this year's championship so far, are still looking for the first victory of the year. 31 stages will decide it. Monte Carlo, Piero Liatti wins for Subaru. Sweden, Kenneth Eriksson wins for Subaru. Kenya, Colin McRae wins for Subaru. So far, the 1997 FIA World Rally Championship has been dominated by blue and gold, but would the situation change on round 4 in Portugal? The massive crowds of spectators have to be seen to be believed. 80,000 packed into barely a mile to see stage 1, and they weren't disappointed. However, a bizarre incident in which a brake line on Tommy Mäkinen's car was damaged after a weight check meant that the stage was subsequently cancelled by the organisers, leaving 30 more to count towards the final results.
After the hot, dusty plains of Africa, the series returned to Europe for the 4th round, the first real gravel rally of the year. Based in the seaside resort of Figueira da Foz, the 1997 Rally of Portugal visited some of the country's most picturesque locations. Yet those charming scenes conceal some of the most challenging competition the country has to offer. After winning the Vauxhall Rally of Wales the previous weekend, Alistair McRae was hoping for more success on the world stage.
It would be nice to win Formula 2 again, and if we do that, then the overall result will come itself. We'll just have to wait and see.
There are 3 former British champions competing in this event, yourself, your brother, and Richard Burns as well. Is there a close rivalry between the 3 of you?
There would be closer rivalry if I was in a 4-wheel drive car, but I think obviously between Colin and Richard it's going to be a good fight. We'll just contest with other F2 drivers.
Despite the sport's superstars, the biggest cheers at the early morning restart were for the local hero Rui Madeira. The morning delivered an extra hazard, fog. Running first on the road obviously suited Colin McRae. He set the fastest time on stage 2. Carlos Sainz was next, just 4 seconds slower. But that stage also saw the first retirement. Finland's Marcus Gronholm went out in spectacular fashion. Amazingly, the crew were completely unhurt. Gronholm's teammate was the young Belgian Freddie Loix, who's just signed a 2-year contract with the Toyota team, and he was an impressive 4th after 3 stages. As usual, Sainz was backed up by Armin Schwartz, but he was about to make yet another early error.
Okay, we manage. Spectator, come on.
How did you get out of the bank?
I mean, a spectator pushed me out because it was very, very soft. It was a recreated area and it was very soft beside.
Otherwise, is the car set up well for the stages?
Yeah, it feels quite good. No problem with that.
Ford's team leader was only too aware that at this level of competition, no one has the luxury of being able to wait and see what the other drivers are doing.
I think now with the running being so close that you can't sort of adopt that sort of strategy. I mean, really, Carlos and the Collins and the Tommies, I mean, they're flat out right from the word go. And, you know, the cars are strong enough to cope with being driven flat out over these conditions for the whole duration of the 3 days.
Sainz was 3rd, but not entirely happy despite the fact that just 7 seconds separated the top 3.
Carlos, the time's very close on these first few stages. Have you had any problems?
Yeah, at the moment we are having some problem with the center diff. We don't have it in active mode, and we're trying to repair it in the next one.
What does that actually mean in terms of driving?
Well, it's not perfect, but...
The first 3 stages belonged to Subaru. Kenneth Eriksson set the fastest time on the second and led briefly, but on the next, McRae regained the lead from his colleague. Like Sainz, though, mechanical niggles meant that all was not well inside the car.
Into 6 right, into K, 6 right over crest, and right tightens the 3 right minus line. 6 right, 30.
The car started getting a misfire towards the end, and then the last two we've had quite a bad misfire, so we've had to be very careful. The engine keeps cutting out in the slow corners.
How much time do you think you lost?
We lost the one before this one, we lost quite a bit because it stalled in one corner, we spun, so we dropped quite a bit there. We were quicker than Carlos in this one, but I think he's got a bit of a problem as well.
Still, the times are very close though.
Yeah, very close, yeah, but it's a bit difficult when you're not sure if the engine's actually going to go when you push the throttle or not.
Sainz's problems continued. The behaviour of the infamous Portuguese crowds was the least of his worries.
Derecha rápida, José, abre con fe. 3. Atención, no se ve.
Stage 5 saw the end of his rally. Gearbox failure reduced Sainz and co-driver Lewis Moyer to the role of spectators for the second time in as many rallies.
I think now the experts needs to check the gearbox and decide what it is. Can only drive a car, so I don't know what is going on inside.
2 retirements in a row. I mean, how does that leave you in terms of the championship?
I don't know in the championship. I'm really now hoping to have a good result, clean run, and really, you know, stop this bad luck.
With Sainz out, the rampant Subarus were now on course to continue their domination of the rally and the championship. It was a situation, however, which wouldn't last for long.
Into 6 left, into K, 4 right of a crest line. Into 6 right, and K, 3 left, and tightens.
Dead. Just tell them to stop. All the ignition powers, everything on it just won't run.
Nick to service, come in.
No, push.
Nick to service, come in.
Nick.
The car has stopped in a stage. All the fuses and everything is in, but it's just stopped dead. We have ignition, but nothing else.
Spectators pushed the car out of stage 6, but it refused to go any further.
Colin, what happened?
Just this electrical problem, whatever it was, just completely stopped the engine now.
How far into the stage?
About a K from the end.
And the engine just died, or what?
Yeah, just stopped, wouldn't start again.
We had reports of you pushing the car, is that right?
Yeah, we pushed it out to the end, but then we couldn't get it going.
It's proving a very, very tough rally. Already lost Carlos as well. What's happening?
It shouldn't be. I mean, obviously we've got a problem in the wiring or some electronics in the car. We couldn't find out what it was.
How's this going to affect the championship?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it now.
Richard Burns was hoping to repeat his safari success, but early on he'd found himself detached from the leading trio.
There's a little bit of dust hanging around under the trees, but apart from Colin, then it's affecting everybody the same.
Is it flat out at the moment, or is there a bit of cat and mouse going on?
I think it's fairly flat out. We're just a little bit behind the sort of leading trio, and it's basically, it's a reason that I know. It's just I don't have the flow just at the moment, but it should come.
For Richard and his Mitsubishi teammate Tommy Mäkinen, the retirements of Colin and Carlos were excellent news. Mäkinen, the reigning world champion, desperately needed a win to boost his points tally.
Behind the battle for overall honours, the fight for victory in the 2-litre two-wheel drive Formula 2 class was just as intense, and the Renault Megane of Portugal's José Carlos Macedo was one of the first to crack under the pressure. Alistair McRae was still keeping the family flag flying in his Golf, while Seat, the reigning world Formula 2 champions, had cars for Irvin Weber and Harry Rovanperä. Local support was for Adrugilo Lopez in the Peugeot 306, who led the class at the end of the day in 10th place overall. Gustavo Treyes from Uruguay must have been delighted to be in 9th place in his Group N Mitsubishi. Monaco's Jean-Pierre Richelmy was 8th at the end of the day in an Escort Cosworth, over 2 minutes behind a privately entered Escort World Rally car driven by Grégoire de Mavius from Belgium, which was 7th. Armin Schwartz, in the only remaining works escort, had climbed back to 6th position and would be well placed for the start of day 2. 5th was the Subaru Impreza of Rui Madeira, who was trying a little too hard sometimes to please the crowds. Richard Burns, fresh from that excellent second-place finish in Kenya 3 weeks ago, was still 4th.
60, easy right long, to flat left long, to crest 50, fast left minus.
Freddie Loix was now 3rd in the Toyota, although he was over a minute behind the leading pair. The winner of this year's Swedish rally, Kenneth Eriksson, carried the hopes of the Subaru team. With the daylight stages drawing to a close, he was locked in a two-way battle. His disappointment at retirement in Africa now a fading nightmare, he was sharing the honours of fastest stage times. Tommy Mäkinen's retirement in Kenya, plus disappointment in both Sweden and Monte Carlo, meant that he still had to rediscover the kind of form which saw him become world champion. In Portugal, though, things were different. This was the Mäkinen of old.
Heti oikein ja vasen.
The Finn took the fight to Eriksson when Tommy grabbed a 4-second lead on stage 9 and was another second faster on the next. The difference in body language at the next service area said it all.
Tommy's really put the pressure on, hasn't he, in the last few stages?
No, it has been the same pressure all the day. I mean, really, he has been very fast and he is in front of us with 5 seconds now. So, but we will come back.
How's he been able to pull out that time, do you think?
No, he's always very fast, and I've been trying as good as I could. And of course, especially on the 2 last one, it wasn't really any advantage to be first on the roll because it was a lot of sand as well. But Tom has been driving very, very well, and it will be a hard fight.
Is 5 seconds the sort of lead you'd hope for at this stage?
It's not so much. It's still 3 more stages today to go, and those famous Fafa stages in the dark. It's I'm afraid a little bit. At the moment, it's very quiet, and there was already some dust on the last stage, and in the dark, it's really difficult if there's some dust.
Running first on the road meant Eriksson would have a slight advantage when it got dark for the final 3 stages, as dust hangs in the air like a fog, and Eriksson would take a massive 19 seconds off him in a little under 21 miles to push the blue Subaru back to the front of the field. This was a contest we'd seen before. The longest day of the rally, if not the entire championship, drew to a close. Eriksson had turned a 5-second deficit into a 14-second advantage, and when he arrived at the day's final service, it was his turn to look the more relaxed.
I think, to be fair, Tommy had a little bit of dust on the first one in the darkness, but as far as I understand, on the 2 last one in the dark, they didn't have any dust, so I don't know. The car handles very nicely, and I had a good run over there.
He did very well. He was really fast.
It seems to be a bit of a repeat of Sweden.
Yes, it's very, very tight between us. We'll see tomorrow where we are. For sure, I have to drive flat out.
What is tomorrow going to be like? Is it going to be harder or easier than today?
No, it's always hard, but good fun as well.
In Formula 2, Alistair McRae was locked in combat with Adrugilo Lopez and Harry Rovanperä.
We held 2nd place in F2 right through the day, but in the 3 stages tonight the power steering failed, so we've dropped I think 40 seconds, so we're now 43 seconds behind the leader, 3rd in F2.
Is that something you can make up tomorrow?
I don't know, we'll see, we'll give it a go. They've been going very quickly today, but it's quite a hard rally, it's hard in the car, so we'll give it a good shot.
At the head of the leaderboard, Eriksson and Mäkinen were a minute in front of Loix's Toyota, with the Mitsubishi of Burns and Madeira in the Subaru rounding off the top 5.
Leg 2's 9 stages began with an event made for spectators. It might have been less than 3 miles long, but that didn't stop the 40,000 who packed into the Lusada rallycross circuit for one of the most exciting super special stages in the entire championship. From Lusada, it was back up into the hills. The next 3 stages were repeats of the final 3 from day 1, when Ericsson had taken so much time off Mäkinen. In the daylight, Kenneth didn't have the same advantage. Even though he was quicker than on the first run through, this time it was his turn to lose precious seconds on each of the 3 stages. Mäkinen was literally flying.
Aukee. 3 hyppy täys. 100 tuplahuomio. Nyppy alas, heti pitkä paha vasen. Aukee.
Tommy'd now made up all but 1 of the 14 seconds that had separated him from Kenneth at the start of the day.
In terms of your own ability, are you right on the limit?
I can't say right on the limit. It's I've been concentrate very carefully and of course going flat out, but maybe still I could go a bit faster, but of course it makes more risk as well.
Tommy has an advantage now for the next 4 stages, and maybe I have an advantage in the stage in the night time.
So it's going to be backwards and forwards for the rest of the day?
Hopefully I can stay in front, but that's my target, but it will be very difficult now.
How long can you hang on with this pressure?
I'm feeling very cool in the moment, and I feel that I can hang on up to the last stage if it's necessary.
Armin Schwartz, fighting back in 6th place, was right on the pace. He'd actually been faster than Ericsson on 2 of those 3 stages, although the 5th place of Rui Madeira was still a long way off. Richard Burns was grimly hanging on to 4th position as he and co-driver Robert Reid approached the famous jump on the Fafe stage, a magnet for thousands of spectators.
Here, big jump, 30 right max, 70 over crest, fast right minus, long, 50.
Sadly for Burns and Reid, their rally would end soon afterwards. The Mitsubishi parked up with a broken gearbox.
Richard, what happened?
At the end of stage 15 we started getting a bit of a noise in the transmission just under power, a sort of whining, and it was okay on the road section, and we went into this stage. First gear was extremely noisy, and then gradually towards the end of the stage we lost first, second and third, and then just on the short piece of road section here, 4th, 5th and 6th are all stripped as well, so we can't go anywhere.
That took the pressure off Loix, who was driving with an ever-increasing confidence and maturity.
82 wordt 50 rechts 63. Om 50 links 80 couperen. En 50 links 82 asfalt.
Freddie, there's an incredible battle in front of you for the lead. Who are you competing with today?
For the moment, nobody. Normally Richard Burns, he was 30 seconds behind me, and I was a little bit pushing to stay in front of him, but now he's out of the rally, and I think now the most important thing for me to learn and to still make these stage times.
While Loix might have been able to relax a little, there was plenty going on further down the leaderboard. In Formula 2, the Seat of Harry Roven-Pera spent much of the day locked in a battle with the Volkswagen Golf of Alistair McRae. The young Scotsman eventually gained the upper hand and would end the day in 10th place overall, 50 seconds ahead of the Finn. They both trailed the Peugeot of Adrugilo Lopez, though. He led the class and was 7th at the end of leg 2.
We dropped a bit of time this morning. Chose the wrong tyres, put on an arrow tyre, and with the temperature it sort of overheated very quickly. But then we pulled back some time. I think we're back to 2nd in F2 and I think 40 seconds behind the Peugeot, so good afternoon.
In Group N, Gustavo Treyes had slipped back. He ended the day in 9th place, just 7 seconds behind the identical Mitsubishi Lancer of Germany's Manfred Stoll. Excitement of a rather more unwelcome nature resulted in Masao Kamioka remodelling the rear of his Subaru. Jean-Pierre Richelme's relatively unknown in world rallying. His performance in Portugal, though, was impressive. He was 5th after the 2nd leg. Rui Madeira wasn't so lucky. He'd been setting some respectable times and had been elevated to 4th place by Burns going out. Then a spectacular accident on the 5th of the day's stages saw his challenge effectively come to an end. Nearly 30 minutes were lost. The Subaru All-Stars mechanics were faced with a major rebuild at the next service area. A broken windscreen was the least of their worries.
Very difficult to ride corners. The rear of the car going up and we roll one time for out of the road, but we need the help of the spectators, and after 30 minutes and very good work of the spectators, we put the car on the road.
Besides Richelme, there were two other Ford Escorts in the top 10. Gregoire de Mavius was enjoying the power of his new World Rally car, while the factory car driven by Armin Schwartz continued to set some superb times, although he was suffering from poor visibility.
How much can you actually see when you're driving in dust?
Nothing at all. I mean, it depends how big the dust is. On the last one was quite bad because the sun was coming against you and the dust was there, so it was really bad.
Freddie Loix was enjoying a trouble-free run in the sleeker, although the same couldn't be said of the man ahead of him. Kenneth Eriksson had been losing time to Mäkinen all day, and darkness would bring further disappointment for the Subaru team. On this occasion, the night would become a little too dark.
During that time, was a clock ticking in your brain at the time you were losing to Tommy?
Yes, of course. For the first half a minute or a minute, and then I thought this will be bad. And when I listened to the engine, I saw something was really wrong. So I was nearly sure when it happened that I couldn't restart it. But we tried for 20 minutes really hard with everything, but it was impossible.
Tommy Mäkinen was a man with one objective in mind. Even before Eriksson's retirement, his performance had been electrifying. Over the day's 9 stages, he'd set the fastest time on every single one and turned a deficit of 14 seconds into an advantage of 32. With Eriksson now gone, Mäkinen would take a massive lead into the third and final day.
I was really driving flat out this last stage, and I thought it's still good competition between us, but I'm so sorry for Kenneth. It's rallying, it's nothing to do.
Mäkinen's lead was now 3¼ minutes over a pleasantly surprised Freddie Loix, while Ford Escorts now made up the remainder of the top 5.
The morning of day 3 and the dramatic backdrop for the final 9 stages was provided by the rolling hills and mysterious valleys of the area around Arganil. In the past, the Rally of Portugal has been won and lost in these hills. Was this year's event keeping a last-minute surprise in store for the unwary? Mäkinen's Mitsubishi would run first on the road. With such a comfortable lead, it would take a disaster to prevent Mäkinen from taking his first win of the year. But as Sainz, McRae, Burns and Eriksson all knew, disasters can and do happen on this rally. Behind Tommy, the rest of the top 5 were taking no risks. Jean-Pierre Richelme finished in a superb 5th place. Next came Gregoire de Mavius in the first privately entered Escort WRC to finish a round of the World Rally Championship. Third was Armin Schwartz, who kept intact his 100% record of finishing and scoring points on every round of this year's championship.
I don't know how we do it. I mean, we just try to get to the finish, and each time it worked out, and so I'm more than happy with my 4 results.
Second was Freddie Loix, his best result at the highest level of the sport. With de Mavius, he was also one of 2 Belgians in the top 4, something of a record.
Do you feel as if you really earned second place?
Okay, it's not a real second place, I can understand it, but okay, even with the top drivers, I did some good time.
The leaders might have been driving to finish, but a real battle was going on in Formula 2. Lopez started the final day 40 seconds up on McRae, but the Scot began to reel him in, taking back 14 seconds on a single stage. What was the secret?
Maybe the other stages, he knew them a bit better. And here, as I say, there's an awful lot of fast downhill stuff, and he's obviously using the brake pedal too much.
Try as he might, Lopez couldn't extend himself to hold back the Flying Scot. Without taking excessive risks, Alistair increased his pace to breeze past the Peugeot and win Formula 2 by a comfortable 48 seconds.
I think it's good more for Volkswagen. I think we now lead the Manufacturers' Championship for F2, and they're not even doing the full championship, so maybe they'll change their mind.
But the day and the rally belonged to Tommy Mäkinen. Out of 30 stages which counted, he'd been fastest on 19 of them. At last, the Subaru stranglehold on the championship had been broken.
How do you feel to have got the first win of the year?
Very good. It's really what we need. It's very good for our team. We really need. I need it, and everybody needs it.
Mäkinen's winning margin was over 4 minutes from a delighted Freddie Loix. Ford were equally pleased. 3 of the top 5 were escorts, even if only Schwartz was registered for the Manufacturers' Championship. After 4 rounds, the drivers' table has its 4th different leader. Mäkinen has a 5-point cushion over McRae, followed by Sainz and Schwartz for Ford, then Ericsson, who shares 5th place with his Subaru teammate Piero Liati. Despite Mäkinen's win, Subaru still lead the series for manufacturers, with Mitsubishi having moved up to within 7 points and Ford just 3 behind them.
A well-deserved win left Mäkinen and co-driver Seppo Harjanne to sample the sweet taste of victory. The unseasonably warm weather meant that the crowds which witnessed their performance were even larger than usual. Few, if any, left disappointed. Even the early departures of so many of the leading drivers hadn't dampened their legendary enthusiasm. From the crowds of Portugal, the championship will next be played out in front of an equally enthusiastic Spanish audience for the Rally Catalunya, where Sainz, the local hero, will be looking to repeat his 1995 victory. Last year's winner, Colin McRae, though, might have slightly different ideas. We'll be reporting from Catalunya in 3 weeks' time.